Good morning. Happy Easter. For those of you who don't celebrate Easter, happy Sunday. As a chicken farmer, pretty much every day is Easter because you get to hunt for eggs all the time, and it's fun. And the dogs get really sleek, smooth coats because sometimes they find the eggs before you do. Anyway, I've been following the James Freeman saga with the 7th Judicial District Court in New Mexico. I thought it was interesting and somewhat hilarious that Freeman took credit for the New Mexico Supreme Court issuing an order rescinding its prior order requiring masks. For those of you who like mask mandates, well, screw you guys. Call me a science denier all you want. I am seeing more and more mask mandates come down. I have been to a hospital a year and a half ago to see a client for a personal injury case, and I got turned away because I didn't have proof of vaccination. And now, going into the same hospital, you're not required to wear a mask. They've taken the plexiglass down, and even the staff walking around aren't wearing masks. So, yay! I guess hospitals must be science deniers. Anyway, so now the issue is apparently it's filming in the courthouse, and Freeman doesn't like it. Unfortunately, unless there is a state law prohibiting it or a state constitutional provision prohibiting it, the court has power to control what happens in the courthouse. And the court can issue orders preventing you from filming within the courthouse. Now, right now, Freeman, despite being, completely over-emotional and reactionary and running hot and cold with the sheriff is still, out of the goodness of the sheriff's heart, not enforcing those particular kinds of mandates, those particular kinds of orders from the court. Which is, it's a good sheriff as far as I'm concerned. You can disagree with me, but that's a good sheriff. And Frazee is still the sheriff, so there you go. It's a good sheriff. The sheriff can choose to ignore, not enforce, I should say, orders like that. An order is essentially a law. Consider it a law. It has the same effect as a law. And the sheriff has discretion on what laws to enforce or not enforce. That's been a big political issue with some sheriffs saying, this is a Second Amendment sanctuary county or whatever. We're not going to enforce yada yada, whatever federal or state law about firearms. And the problem is they have that discretion. Well, problem. The good side, one of the fun things about sheriffs is that they're elected, and they are much more responsive to the people than an unelected judge or an unelected police chief, etc. And so they get to do things like make popular statements about what laws they're not going to enforce because they don't believe them to be constitutional. Great. So in this particular case, the sheriff was not enforcing and did not enforce the court's order about mask mandates. And the sheriff has, at least as far as I can deduce from the interactions of James's last live stream, basically stated that they're not going to enforce any of the rules regarding any of the court orders regarding filming in the courthouse. Now, James is going to be very upset to learn that while the sheriff has the discretion to enforce or not enforce certain laws as he sees fit, he doesn't have the same amount of discretion when it comes to doing things like taking a prisoner into custody, because that's his job. He doesn't have discretion to not do that. And when the court starts issuing summonses and the sheriff starts serving those summonses, as the sheriff is required to do, all of a sudden, either you show up to court for your contempt hearing, or you ignore the summons and you get a bench warrant. The court can issue a bench warrant for failure to appear at that point. And now what would the sheriff be enforcing? Well, I mean, they may have discretion on whether or not they take you in on that bench warrant, but that bench warrant is going to be out there following you around. And if you ever end up in front of the court, again, for any purpose, that can come back to bite you in the butt. For many reasons. Because again, the sheriff doesn't have an option on taking prisoners into his custody. So ultimately, the problem is, for James's problem is that there is no state statute, there is no state constitutional provision, and there's no federal provision of law, either statutory or constitutional, that prevents a New Mexico state court judge from issuing orders not in conflict with any other provision of law or any orders from a higher court that restrict your ability to film in a courthouse. It's not going to be a First Amendment issue. I've never seen any successful challenge to a court's restriction on filming in a courthouse under the First Amendment. And federal courts do it. State courts do it. Most courts do it. The courts that don't do it appear to me to be an exception. The courts that allow unrestricted filming within the courthouse are the exceptions, not the rule. So he doesn't have any real good rule of law to point to say that this is unlawful for the court to issue this order. So all he has is his own political beliefs that it shouldn't be that way. Now, if the judges in New Mexico are elected and not appointed, well, maybe Freeman can get another judge to run for that position. If they're appointed, well, maybe Freeman can get a new governor elected that will appoint different judges with different values that comport more with James's political beliefs. Those, however, will be temporary stopgap measures, because as soon as another judge gets in there with opposing beliefs, the mandates can come back. The restrictions against filming can come right back. If James wants a more permanent solution, he's going to have to get either a statutory or a constitutional provision enacted in New Mexico that is going to prohibit courts from restricting filming in the courthouse. And I don't think that's going to happen, but that would be the next step for Freeman. You got to get a statutory provision, a statute enacted that would prevent it, or you have to get an amendment to the New Mexico Constitution that would prevent it. Those are your options. Jerking around with the sheriff isn't going to save you. Jerking around with the judge, I mean, better than jerking around with the sheriff, but still very unlikely to save you. At the end of the day, if you want it changed permanently, you're going to have to get that state statute passed or a state constitution provision passed. Or you can go all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, challenge it, get a ticket, challenge it in federal court as a violation of the First Amendment, and then appeal it and cross your fingers that you make it all the way up to the Supreme Court. You probably won't. They'll probably reject certiorari. You might be able to get it up to the Court of Appeals, but I mean, good luck. You're going to appeal it to a Court of Appeals. New Mexico's the Ninth Circuit? I think it's the Ninth Circuit. It might be the Fifth Circuit. But you're going to appeal it up to a Court of Appeals that has restrictions on filming within the Court of Appeals courthouse. So how far is that really going to get you? Anyway, that's all I got for you today. Once again, happy Easter if you celebrate it. If not, happy Sunday, and take care.